Yo, how is it going, Bears fans? Welcome back to another episode of Beared Down Uncut, where we talk everything Bears every day of the week. Who will be the Bears' cornerback 2 in 2020? And will these guys provide an upgrade over Prince Amukamara's play for the last couple of years? We're going to be answering these questions and many more today in episode 27 of Beared Down Uncut. Welcome back to the show, guys. I would like to say before I introduce myself and my co-hosts, we're currently sitting at 1,356 subscribers. You're seeing this on Monday morning. If you are stumbling across this video and want more Bears content, I think the goal is 1,500 subs this week. We've been growing like crazy, and you guys have been killing the support recently. You guys have been loving the videos. So do us a favor, subscribe, click the bell for notifications whenever we post, and also like the video. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. I am your host, Chris Malpe, and today I am joined with my co-host, Parth Shaw. How's it going, Parth?
I'm chilling. What's up?
And I'm also joined today with a video producer on the channel who also makes a little cameo every once in a while. What's going on, Zach Rimbos?
It's going pretty well. Just finished up the Last Dance documentary tonight. That was amazing. I think it was episode 7, 8.
7, 8, right? Yeah. I think there's one more week of that. It's been
so good.
It's been really good, and I really never wanted to end, but it eventually is going to. But we are here today to talk about the Bears cornerback 2 heading into 2020. You know, we've spoken about the wide receivers, we've spoken about the tight ends, we've spoken about the quarterbacks, all being good competitions this offseason, and the secondary does not lack a bad competition. Does not lack a bad competition either. You know, it's going to look really good back there. There's a lot of very high caliber players, and let's get right into it. We've each got some stuff from a player to read off. We're going to start with the two players that the Bears signed in Trey Roberson and Artie Burns. So I'm going to go first, and then I'm going to pass it to Zach for Artie Burns. But let's talk a little bit here about Trey Roberson. So Roberson has some history of playing football in Illinois, as he played college football at Indiana from 2011 to 2013, and then transferred to Illinois State for his last 2 years of eligibility and graduated in 2015. Believe it or not, he was actually a quarterback growing up and decided to make the switch to defensive back before entering the NFL draft. So he actually played quarterback up until the end of college. While he wasn't invited to the 2016 NFL Combine, he had some pretty solid measurables at his pro day, clocking in at 4.52 40-yard dash, a broad jump just over 10 feet. Following his pro day, he was offered a tryout with the Minnesota Vikings and signed to their practice squad. After a few trips on and off their practice squad over a couple of months, he decided to head north and take his talents to the Canadian Football League, signing with the Calgary Stampeders in May of 2018. During his first season, Roberson intercepted 3 passes and had 54 tackles, and during his historical second season in the CFL, he started all 16 games, and Trey recorded 41 tackles and 7 interceptions, all while helping his team win the CFL championship, which is called the Grey Cup. Roberson ended up choosing the Bears over 9 other NFL options proposed to him and has signed the biggest CFL to NFL deal since Cameron Wake joined the league in 2014. So a very interesting prospect there from Canada, and Trey Roberson. He's really the oddball in this whole thing. We don't really know what to expect from him. Obviously, he's only played in the CFL. So he's really an option that could be a complete hit or miss. And, it's going to be interesting to see how he plays out. We'll talk about him a little later. But, Zach, I'm going to pass it to you right now. I know you do have another free agent to talk about.
Yep, Artie Burns. So Artie Burns was the most recent acquisition by the Bears, similar to Roberson. Had some pretty solid measurables coming into the league. He came out of the University of Miami. He ran a 4.46 40-yard dash. Also had a 10.4 vertical jump at the 2016 NFL Combine. Selected 25th overall in 2016 NFL Draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Burns had a lot of promise coming into the league that seemingly never panned out. His development early on was delayed by injuries, and it is important to mention that he played college ball alongside current Bears safety Deion Bush. In 2017, Burns got his chance to start in Pittsburgh, recording 54 tackles, 13 passes defended, and an interception. In 2018, he recorded his first career safety against the Kansas City Chiefs, but only started in 6 games. In 2019, he played in only 10 games, starting in 1, and recorded 8 tackles. His career has seemingly been on the decline, but he will have another chance to prove himself worthy in a buff Chicago secondary. He has always been tabbed for his athletic prowess, as he's very speedy, and I think will be a very, very, very good option for this awesome Bears defense.
I mean, you bring up a good point there. And by the way, you said 10-4 vertical jump. I'm pretty sure that that was a typo by me. I think that meant to be broad jump. But, Artie Burns, a great athlete, someone who we'll also talk about later. I don't know if he essentially gets the chance to start. That's a conversation that we'll have down the road later in the podcast. But a great depth piece regardless here on a one-year deal. Someone who the Bears are really going to try and tap into his athleticism to try and kind of revamp his career. So obviously we just talked about two of the guys that the Bears brought in from somewhere else, but there's obviously an in-house name that's going to be very prominent in this competition. So Parth, I'm going to pass it to you. How about you talk about your cornerback?
Kevin Tolliver, he's an in-house option that is intriguing. Tolliver is approaching his third season in Chicago after being claimed as an undrafted free agent out of LSU in 2018. As he has had more time to learn in Chicago behind Kyle Fuller and Prince Mukamara, Kevin has gotten more opportunities and has shown out recently. Tolliver played 15 games last season, and the reason that most Bears fans don't have much to say about him is because he looked pretty solid in those outings. The only touchdown I remember he gave up was against Dallas to Amari Cooper, which he actually played really great defense and adapted to a really good ball. Tolliver started in Week 15 against the Green Bay Packers and had a couple impressive pass deflections and was covering receivers like Devontae Adams and Allen Lazard as the game went on. And I think Kevin Tolliver is definitely a better option than Artie Burns and Roberson at this point, but we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go ahead and agree with you as far as I would probably choose him over Artie Burns. I mean, we'll see what happens with Roberson. But there's one more option that we do have to talk about. Obviously, probably the most prominent option, and if he can be healthy, probably the starter in my mind heading into Week 1. So let's talk a little bit about the 50th overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, Jaylon Johnson out of Utah. Johnson had 102 tackles and 7 interceptions in 3 years of Pac-12 play. In 2019, he played the entire season with a torn labrum. He had a first-round draft grade by most all websites. The Bears ended up snagging him at 50 after there were injury concerns. In 2019, he had 11 passes defended, and he had 21 total. Also, 2 pick-sixes during his time there with the Utes. Guys, we've talked about 4 options now for the Bears as cornerback too. So regardless, there's not only going to be a good starter there alongside Kyle Fuller, but there's also going to be 2, maybe even 3 good depth pieces. But I want to ask you, Zach, first. Obviously, there's 4 of these guys, and we would assume that not all of them are going to make the cut, even as depth pieces. So if you had to move on from one of these dudes, who do you think it would be?
That's difficult. I think Kevin Tolliver is also a really good special teams piece. I think that he plays, especially like when Prince was here, obviously. I think Kevin Tolliver had some awesome special teams plays as well. He's really good at defending for punt returns. And I think that the easiest one to move on from would be Artie Burns. And I'm not saying that he doesn't have a shot here, but like we were talking about, he's seemingly been on the decline, and who knows, he could have a complete turnaround season. And I like all of these options. I don't think that I would really – I mean, Jaylen Johnson I think has the best shot at this one. I don't know if we're going to talk about that later, but I think that he is the best shot just because he's younger. He's considered one of the best corners at Utah ever. I think that he's got a lot of upside. I think that the easiest to move on from is Artie just because he's been on the decline like we talked about. He's a former first-rounder, didn't pan out, so I think that's the easiest to move on for me.
That's a very good point you bring up. We put more capital into someone like a Trey Roberson than we did like an Artie Burns. And the attractive thing to me about Trey Roberson is he may not get this start, but that being said, he's a pretty raw cornerback. I mentioned it earlier, but he played quarterback throughout his college time, and as someone who's still developing as a corner, someone who you never know, he could be someone who could step in and play slot one day. And obviously it's a different level of play up there in Canada. I hate to be mean about it, but someone who we put a decent bit of draft capital into, and I want to see how he pans out, and I think he could be a good depth piece, similar to Kevin Tolliver. You mentioned he's been here for a couple of years now after being an undrafted free agent. I'm going to go ahead and say Burns as well. Obviously, I hope the best for Artie Burns during this 2020 campaign, but he's been trending downward. I do think it's a good position to be in with guys like Chuck Pagano and Kyle Fuller. But that being said, what's preventing him from continuing to spiral downwards? Because ever since his rookie year, he hasn't been close to as really productive that he was able to be with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there's no signs pointing to his production slowing or picking up. So I also agree. It's a one-year deal, and I think it would be easy for the Bears to move on from him there. Parth, if you had to choose one of these guys to move on from, obviously outside of Jaylon Johnson, would it be Artie Burns, Kevin Tolliver, or Trey Roberson?
I'm going to say, Trey Roberson, coming out of Canada. He doesn't have this best competition like he played against, like you said. I think Artie Burns has a chance to prove himself in the league. He was a former first-rounder. He has the measurables. He's got the size. And I think with Chuck Pagano, he can really excel. And on the other hand, Roberson did sign the largest CFL contract or whatever.
Since 2014.
Since Cameron Wake. So, Roberson, he does have high upside, but I think the Bears don't need someone with high upside at that point. I think that we just need someone who can fill in the depth chart, come in and play if we need someone to do that. And I think Artie Burns is that type of player. If someone goes down, he can definitely step in and do his job. While Roberson, in my opinion, is still a little shaky to put out there against NFL competition.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. You bring up a good point as well. Burns, he may not have been the most productive the last 2 or 3 seasons, but that being said, he's still learned the ropes in the NFL and knows what it takes, whereas Roberson only spent a little bit of time on a practice squad. Ended up excelling in professional play, but not essentially NFL caliber play up there in the CFL. So that's a very interesting one. Obviously, I think we all agree, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, that Jaylen Johnson or Kevin Tolliver probably is going to be the one to win this job. I know Parth brings up a good point there with Artie Burns. But Parth, I'm going to pass it back to you. Obviously there were struggles last year at cornerback 2 with Prince Amukamara. Prince Amukamara, very much a friend of the show, so I don't want to bash him too much because I really respect everything he does and he's a great guy. But whoever starts in 2020, do you think one of these guys will provide as an upgrade for Prince's play last year?
Definitely. Nothing against Prince. I love the guy. Actually, I DM'd him a picture where I think he's like top 5 in like the least amount of yards allowed by a corner past season, but I feel like that's a bad stat. Nothing against Prince though, but I just feel like there's a lot of times when he got burned, especially against Kenny Galladay. And I just feel like a guy like Jaylon Johnson or Kevin Tolliver would be a massive upgrade over Prince. I mean, we saw whenever Tolliver was in the game, I feel like the defense was better when Tolliver was in the game compared to Prince.
It's unfortunate that the team had to move on from Amukamara. He's obviously a great guy. He was a good piece there in the locker room. But that being said, it's a business at the end of the day. He was aging a little bit. And obviously, you got to take into account that he was a cap casualty and saved the Bears about $9 million when they moved on from him this offseason. So that's an interesting point you bring up there. It was tough watching Prince last year at some points. I agree. And he's flashed as a Bear at times. Was pretty solid in 2018, 2017 when he was with the Bears. But declined a decent bit, I would say, in 2019. And I'm really hoping that Jaylon Johnson's someone who can already step in and provide an upgrade and be better than Prince Amukamara. Obviously, I said it earlier, playing alongside Kyle Fuller is bound to help. And I also think, just in general, all these options being youthful prevents the opportunity of them, I guess, being as spotty as Prince, I guess I'd call it, because sometimes Prince was solid, sometimes, he got burnt, as Parth mentioned. So I think one of these guys will not only be more consistent, but definitely provide an upgrade from Prince Amukamara, as we saw in 2019. Zach, what do you think? Do you think one of these guys will provide an upgrade there at cornerback too?
Yeah, so I definitely hope Prince lands on his feet somewhere. I still think he deserves an NFL job. I think he's awesome. And I mean, I'm very appreciative of him coming on the show. But to me, Jaylon Johnson has got a chip on his shoulder now. He's thinking, I'm sure he's thinking, I'm one of the best cornerbacks in this draft. You're going to let me slip to 50? All right, then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. And I think that he kind of can have that dog mentality now. I think that he's going to show up in the league. I think he will definitely be an upgrade. Obviously, again, like no disrespect to Prince, but I think that Jaylen Johnson is going to surprise a lot of people, and they're going to be like, "Why was this dude not drafted higher?" That's my opinion. I mean, you can probably disagree with me, but I love the kid. I think that he's, like I said, he's got so much upside. He's 21 years old. He played the entire season last year with a torn labrum, and we've talked about that multiple times. But dog mentality, it's right there. You can see it.
That's a great point. I mean, you look at the cornerback selected ahead of him, Damar Arnetti, AJ Terrell. Noah, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. There, I think it was at like 30 or something. So a very big chip there on Jaylon Johnson's shoulder. 11 passes defended and a pick 6 in 2019 with that torn labrum. Pac-12 is no joke, covering receivers like Brandon Ayuk and Michael Pittman. He did very well against them with a torn freaking labrum. Let's get into the question that we all have been waiting for before we close this one off, guys. I'm going to go ahead first and answer this one for myself. The question is, who will be the Bears' cornerback 2? Who will get the week 1 start alongside Kyle Fuller in 2020? I'm going to go with Jaylen Johnson if he is healthy. This is a very interesting one because Johnson obviously has had some injury problems in the past, but the good thing about him is he has shown that he can play through it. Zach mentioned it earlier. He's a dog. Reminds me of someone like Akeem Hicks on that defense who really brings the energy. I think he's just another great piece that's going to be a great addition to this defense. Has a chip on his shoulder. Really can do a little bit of everything if you watch his film. He can jump routes. He can play press coverage. He can read the quarterback's eyes. He can do anything you want him to, and I think he's a great piece alongside Kyle Fuller. It's nothing against these guys with NFL experience. I'm big on Kevin Tolliver. I like Artie Burns' speed. Trey Roberson's a prospect who I think has a lot of upside if he can work for a while. That being said, Jaylon Johnson was absolutely impeccably good in college, and I think he really is ready to play at the next level once again with that chip on his shoulder. So he's my cornerback too for week 1 of 2020. He will get the start at Ford Field in Detroit. Zach, I'm going to pass it back to you now. Who do you think gets the start across from Kyle Fuller at Ford Field? Who's going to be trying to pick off Matthew Stafford in week 1?
Jaylen Johnson. I'm riding with him. Again, I don't really need to repeat it, but everything that this kid has, he's, like we said before, he's one of the best youths to step on the field. I think they said the best cornerback they've ever had at Utah. He slipped to 50. He played injured last season. He's got everything to prove. I think that he's taking that job week 1. I hate to say it, but I don't even know if it's a question. I think Jaylen Johnson, if he's healthy, is the starter for sure.
I mean, I think the only question is his health. So, yeah, I mean, I think that might be the only question. Unless Kevin Tolliver can step it up, he's been able to improve. And obviously, you never know with Artie Burns and Trey Roberson. Those guys are oddballs. Chuck Pagano's been someone who has worked really well with members of the secondary throughout his time in Indianapolis and Baltimore. Obviously, Chuck Pagano, well known for working with Ed Reed there in Baltimore back about a decade ago. So that's an interesting point I bring up as well, I think. But I also agree that Jaylen Johnson is probably penciled in there as the week 1 starter. Parth, do we have a consensus decision here? Do you think Jaylen Johnson will be cornerback 2 in 2020, or at least as far as week 1 goes? And if not, who do you think will get the start?
I'm going to just go against you guys just so we have some content on the show. But I'll say it's Kevin Tolliver. And it could be Kevin Tolliver if you think about it. The Bears in the past haven't really started rookie defensive players right off the bat. Like Roquan Smith didn't start week 1. I mean, he did play the majority of the snaps, but he didn't start week 1. So you could say the same about Kevin Tolliver coming in and starting week 1 and just seeing how it goes, especially because he's an in-house player, knows the defense and how everything works. And Johnson's health is still up in the air. We don't know how exactly that is going to be. And due to this whole pandemic and might not be having rookie camp, even preseason and all that stuff is in the air right now. So with all that being in the air, I just feel like Kevin Tolliver is the safer decision if it comes down to all that stuff.
That's a very good point. At the end of the day, in an offseason, that could get weird. Kevin Tolliver surely is the in-house name, and Chuck Pagano has not been one to shy away from speaking highly on Tolliver in the past. that'll pretty much do it for this one, guys. Once again, another long episode of Uncut. These are supposed to be shorter than podcasts, but with all the content that we've been doing, everything's getting long. We're loving to learn more about the game, and we're really getting into it for you guys. So if you guys are still listening, do us a favor, subscribe, click the bell for notifications whenever we post, and like the video. If you want more content from us, head over to bearddown.com for articles, posts, blogs, columns, whatever you want to call them. There's a lot of writing on there, and we really put hard work into that as well. You can find the links to our social media fan pages in the description, and if you would like to connect with the podcast on Instagram and Twitter, you can follow it at Beared Down. Zach Rimbos, Parth, it's been a pleasure to join you boys tonight. Any last words?
Hope you all boys had a great Mother's Day. Treat your mom well.
Yeah. Happy Mother's Day. Again, hope you like Parth said, I hope you guys all took care of your parents, especially your mother today. Should you have that royalty, it's a pleasure to be able to have somebody like that in your life. So other than that, stay safe. Let's hope that training camp is still something to look forward to here. I think that they're going to be able to do it just with nobody attending that besides the players. But yeah, other than that, stay safe. Keep the ones around you safe and bear down.
I mean, you really have to be appreciative for mothers now, especially during this pandemic. My mom, at least personally, has been putting food on the table every night, and it's something that you really can't overlook. I mean, like 2 straight months of cooking. Whenever you order out, you have to clean the containers that all the food comes in and stuff. It's really something that you can't overlook. And me coming home from college, I really appreciate a home-cooked meal. But that'll pretty much do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Zach said it. We hope training camp happens. At the end of the day, football would be better without fans than no football at all. Obviously, we all hope that we can be out there at Hallis Hall. That would be so sweet, this summer. Being able to watch the Bears at their own training facility. I haven't been there since I was really a young kid. It would be a lot of fun, and it's something we can all hope for. But at the end of the day, the goal is football over anything. So, as always, Chicago, it's been a pleasure to host you guys. Once again, my name is Chris Maltby. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 27, I believe, of Uncut. And as always, stay safe and bear down. Peace.